Alrighty, friends, and now we are moving on to the Renegade Sveshnikov, where we are going to go rogue, we are going to rebel, we are going to be the rascals of the chessboard. You see what I did there? Lots of R word alongside Renegade. So what is this chapter about? In this chapter, we are actually going to go a little bit off of the mainstream variations, which we are very proud of. By the way, I believe that we have provided an incredibly strong, robust, very difficult to beat repertoire, mostly backed, of course, by Stockfish and other engines as well. But for now, let's have a look at some wilder variations, which may be less approved by the engine, but it can catch, an unprepared opponent really well. And even if they are somewhat prepared, these variations are a lot of fun. So without further ado, let's dive in. And this is going to be a strange one, even for me as a presenter, because typically when I'm presenting a black opening course, I look for wide deviations. But here we are going to need to look for both. So far, so good. Knight b d5, d6. And our first deviation is going to be in the trendy knight d5, where, of course, the course main recommendation here is the most popular and potentially best knight b8. But in the spirit of why not coconut, why don't we just sprinkle in a little bit of knight b4 to shock our opponents? And once again, the move is objectively really not that bad, extremely rarely seen. I think I saw something like 3 games in the Masters database, and it's really not that bad. The primary concept behind the move is that just like when the knight goes to b8 then to d7, we can route the knight to c5 via a6 c5. But here, occasionally, we can also sprinkle in a bishop f5 move, which would create some very annoying threats on c2. And so, the 2 main variations for white are 2 kick moves, a3 and c3. We'll start with c3. We go back, and bishop e3 is most logical, going after our a7 pawn, which, in a true Sveshnikov fashion, we are not going to worry about at all. Bishop d7, knight takes a7, and bishop e7. Obviously, we had to give up the pawn. We did give up the pawn, but now our development is running very smoothly. 2 moves. If knight b5, f5, trying to immediately seize the initiative, planning on f4. So most logical is f3, we castle, bishop e2, f4. And as you can see, the motives are very similar to the ones that we saw in the main line. For example, here we would like to seek some kingside counterplay, and that now can be achieved by the very handy move queen e8, hitting the knight on b5, and of course preparing queen g6 or queen h5. a4, queen g6. And it is quite awkward for white now to continue this game of chess, because obviously kingside castles is going to be very strongly met by bishop h3. And if they don't do that, then bishop f5, pawn e4 is going to blast the position open. And look, all I can tell you, it looks like a fun position to me. Right, so perhaps after bishop e7, instead of the immediate knight retreat, bishop e2 is more precise in order to put castling immediately on the menu. Now we go bishop g5, angling for the dark squared bishop trade, which is also desired in most cases. And white actually can't avoid it. If knight b5, we take e3, takes, and we deny castling again. Not so simple. a4, castles. b4. Now that move really is an annoying one. It really sidelines our knight on a6, and it's difficult to see what future that knight might have, but bear with me. We have a bit of a trader, and now we drop back to c7. Bishop is on, d5 is under attack, and now comes the second wave of this operation where we go check, and after queen e4, all of a sudden e3 hanging, d5 hanging, and black is having a field day yet again with the renegade variation. All right, so after bishop e7, bishop e2, bishop g5, if they take g5, we take back, knight b5. Now the knight is threatening to take d6 with check, so we are going to take a rather drastic measure here. We defend it with king e7. No worries. Castles, bishop h3. It's very direct and very, very aggressive. Bishop f3, and it is time, friends. When you play Renegade, you really, really have to commit to it and go full Monty. h5, sending Harry joining the party. The plan is really not that sophisticated. h4, knock them on the head on g2, pawn h3, checkmate on g2. b4, h4. Thus, white is best advised to dodge this bullet with king h1, whereupon we are going to retreat to d7 with a fat tempo. And after a4, we are now going to play queen to f4. And in case it's not very obvious, nothing is in the Renegade, we want to send now Gary. h4, Harry has already run up, so it's only right that his buddy Gary joins the fray, and we are sending it in true Sveshnikov fashion. Queen c1 thus, trying to do a trade queens, and shockingly, we are not even averse to that idea. We're going to play g5 anyway. Sveshnikov style. h3. If takes, we would have just captured back and then f5, e4, and annoying stuff is happening to white still on the king side. So h3 is more logical, but send it we shall. Send it we shall. And we have a very complex position where it's still anybody's game, really. And that, friends, concludes the c3, excuse me, variation. I try my best to not to let this out, but the sneeze won this time. Yeah, so that's the c3 line. a3 is going to be the alternative. Again, we go back to a6, and again, the most likely responses is that they go after us with bishop e3. Let's have a look at some alternatives. And here I actually need to admit that I didn't quite cover all of my corners, because here there is an additional plan slash benefit slash call it whatever you want to routing the knight via b4, a6 rather than b8. And that is that we can drop back to c7, offering a trade ski. And if the set trade ski is denied, then we go bishop e7. And just the usual story, kingside castle and send the pawns. Obviously, the c7 knight is not exactly optimally placed here, but at times, especially after b4, we can just build a very strong blockade with b6, potentially pawn a5, drop the knight back to a6, and then it will hold very, very effectively white's queenside intentions, for sure. Okay, so that was c4. Bishop e2 also is met by knight c7. Take. Now knight c7 is a lot worse, because c3, excuse me, because they don't have the c4 b4 play, so it makes more sense from white's perspective to trade. But now after bishop e7, c4, and castles, I really don't think that we have any problems here. b4, f5. And when white really builds up for c5, we can always play b6 and just try to control it as best as possible. And yeah, our main plan, bishop f6, e4, and turning on the heat. Good stuff. Okay, so finally, bishop e3, bishop e7. Knight takes a7, bishop d7. Same story, whether it's a3 or c3, no difference. Knight b5, castles. And now we've got two lines, c4 and knight c3. Let's start with knight c3, because this looks like the easier one to defeat or refute or play against, since again, the pawn on c2 looks weird. f5, of course. Two lines. If f3, it doesn't look good at all. Then we sneak in the check. We have seen this before. Now f4 looks playable, but bishop f6 is our line. bishop e2, knight c5. And we are going to play here knight a4, trading the knights, and then recapture with the rook. And that rook on the full rank is going to be quite a menace. And if they play b4, then the a3 pawn is going to be potentially vulnerable. And f4 pushes are still on the menu for us. We have some compensation for the pawn at the very least. Bishop e2 is a far more sensible move than f3 as far as I'm concerned, but now f4 hits. Bishop d2, queen b6, and now we're pushing these pieces back. And after rook b1, bishop f5, we have got significant piece activity, which once again might make up for the sacrificed material. Fun lines. Right, so instead of all of this, I think c4 is more sensible when we are going to play f5. And again, same dilemma. Should it be bishop e2? Should it be f3? This time we reverse the order. Bishop e2 is the sideline. f4, bishop d2, e4. Let's go. Send it. And we have got all kinds of nasty threats based on e3 or f3, depending on what white does. We're also threatening sooner or later to trade on b5, followed by knight c5. Bishop f6 is also coming. We have got a lot of handy plans. I really don't mind this position for black at all, and the absence of the a7 pawn is neither here nor there. If f3 check, we know this already inside out, and here in fact bishop f2 is really not that great because of the check. And now we have got some tactics city. I suspect after b4, knight b4 I believe is very gnarly for white, because f2 is hanging in the end. So knight c3 forced, take and check, and we pick off b2, and we run away with the chess game. Woo! Yeah! That's it, friends. So yeah, b4 is not a trainable line, but I'm pretty sure it's knight b, a b, queen b, king e2, and oh yeah, check is already over. Okay, never mind. Too easy. Too easy. Too easy. Okay, so yeah, I think that's it. Let me just check if I missed anything. Oh no, it's not it. g3 is the main line after check. I knew I forgot something. So bishop f2 fails to queen a5, therefore g3, and of course we go f4. Bishop f2, and our favorite motif, e4. Love it. Now, if gh, e3, yeah, this is looking disastrous. Bishop b5 first. Queen h4 is coming, don't worry. Or do worry. Oops. Smart. Very smart. King e2, we take with check, go back. Queen b2. And I would like to ever so gently highlight to you my favorite theme, the back rank fest. White is dead lost, despite the material advantage. Knight c5 is coming, the rooks can join, and white can never really consolidate this position. It's absolutely tragic. So e4 has to be met by fe, which is the final variation of this batch. Bishop f6. And one more split. If knight c3, queen e7. I love how we just keep on 18th century romantic style, throwing in pawn after pawn after pawn, and just have very nice initiative in these variations. That's what chess looks like when it's fun. Takes, queen e5, hitting c3, hitting g3, preparing knight c5. Yeah, I would take this. I would play this line every day of the week if I could get this position out of every single game. That is for sure. So queen c2 is the final main line. Bishop b5, cb, take g3, and knight b4. And this is actually the beginning of the end for white, by the way, because after queen d2, we have got bishop takes b2, double exclamation mark, queen takes, and queen a5. Wowzers. And again, the white king is utterly exposed to the mercy of the black pieces, the rook, the knight, the discovered check, the queen, the pin on the a file. It is all too much, and white is about to collapse under the pressure, winning attack. I hope I piqued your fancy, good friends, for a bit of knight b4 shenanigans. So that concludes our first rogue variation in the Renegade Sveshnikov. And with that, we are going to move on to bishop g5. a6, knight a3, and believe it or not, but even here, we have got an alternative to offer you, which is not bishop e6, by the way, to b5. And that alternative is the absolutely crazy, nutty-looking pawn to d5. Yep, you see that right. Not only that, I've got a line in this one for you that is gonna blow your socks off. So stay tuned. Okay, so lots of captures possible. The most obvious one is ED, but it's really not that good because now we have bishop a3, ba3, and knight d4. The main idea, chucking the knight on d4, and then coming out with queen a5. And the white pawn structure is really, really, really problematic. This is going to transpose into one of the main lines, so I shall discuss it then. Bishop takes, this is the line I'm talking about, gf, and knight d5 is the line that we mentioned. If queen takes, shockingly, even the endgame is all right. Takes, and bishop takes a3 is just such an obnoxious threat. They have to dodge it, but this allows very serious counterplay. Knight b4, knight e3, bishop h6, and white keeps on getting hit all the time with dangerous tactics. And now f5. Wow. Now that is a break that most people would overlook, and it's important that we sneak it in now. Obviously, the idea is that after you have bishop f, now we are threatening take on c2, and of course the bishop is immune due to the rook hanging on c1. Very nifty tactic. So look at how quickly our pieces came out here after the queen trade. Knight b4, tempo, bishop h6, tempo, f5, tempo. A3 best, f4, we have to. AB, FE, FE, bishop E, rook d1, bishop d4, and the engine thinks it's equal. And the plan that the engine wants us to pursue is to send Harry as far as it can go. So just up, 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 and push it as best as you can. We're down a pawn, but the bishop pair is a monstrous compensation, and white very clearly lacks plans in these types of positions, so we have got nothing to worry about. Very impressive stuff. So, knight d5 is main, and after bishop takes, pawn takes, we arrive in the previous line that I said that I will discuss in the main line, which is now bishop e6. Bishop c4, check, queen d2, tuck, tuck. And after castles, we can conclude that white's advantage, if any, is entirely symbolic. I mean, they have got these three pawns against these two. That's not an advantage, right? So no problems whatsoever for us. So the best way to meet d5 is actually knight takes d5. And here we are going to double down on the renegade, rogue, rebel, rascal style chess, as we are going to offer you another alternative within the alternative. So bishop takes a3 is a possibility. This line goes like this. ba, check, and now two blocks possible. Bishop d2, then queen d8. Bishop e3. We are going to see the same motif, by the way, in the line without capturing on a3, and that's where the real spice comes. Here we must take d5 and either embrace the end game, which doesn't look that bad at all, knight d4, kingside castle, rook c8, we should be fine. Or white can take with the e-pawn, knight e7, c4, knight f5. Bishop c5, denying castling, b6, kicking, kicking, castling. And our strategic plan is actually quite positional here. We would like to pile up on the backward pawn with knight d6, bishop a6, defend our pawn on e5, and win a quiet positional game. I think this is fine. So, the other move against queen a5 check is the immediate queen d2, which is known to be the critical line. We have to take, and now 2 recaptures possible. If king d2, we go on an adventure. Check, take the bishop, allow the exchange, and play f5. Now, the engine here says white is kilometers ahead. But the engine doesn't understand fear. The engine doesn't understand awkward king position. The engine doesn't understand the annoying threats associated with f4, knight d4, rook d8, etc. So, yeah, and we have a pawn for the exchange. This is by no means an obvious victory to white. If bishop d2, we take the knight and we jump in. Bishop d3, bishop f5, and we trade down. And again, we're down a pawn. It's an endgame, but knight d6, pawn b5 blockade once erected, it's going to be absolutely impregnable. And so black has got quite serious play here, despite being materially down. And that takes us to the really feisty variation. So basically after knight d5, as I said, you can double down on going rogue with bishop takes a3, or we can just do the check. Now queen d2 is the main line again. Bishop d2 is where it's at though. Now we come home. And here it appears that unless white wants to repeat moves, their best option here is bishop e3, which introduces the super nasty bishop b6 threat. Except we don't care. We take e4. We go, come at me. And when bishop b6 lands, not a good move at all, we uncork the absolutely fabulous bishop c5, Queen Saccarino. That's how you go rogue and renegade and rebellious, my friends. And when said queen is captured, let's get this party started. Check, check, check. King d2. Unfortunately, we don't have a mate. Very regrettably, but I must inform you that we have to capture the enemy queen. And the following line is completely forced. Bishop b6, bishop g4, best move for black. Knight c7, is give up the exchange, take. And right away, right off the bat here, we're threatening to win the chess game with knight e4 check, picking off the b6 bishop. But beyond that, we have a pawn for the exchange. The white king is utterly exposed to the mercy of the black pieces. And just in general, especially with the knight on a3, it's an absolute nightmare for white to consolidate. And yeah, we are definitely looking great here. So as a matter of fact, bishop b6 is not playable at all. The correct move is bishop c4. Develop castle. Bishop c5, queen f3, another very annoying developing move, hitting us on e4, covering e3, etc. Takes, knight d6. Thank God we scored a tempo too. And according to the machine, white is definitely preferable here. But there is still a chess game ahead of us, and there is nothing immediate that would indicate that, we are in a world of hurt. So, yeah, I don't necessarily mind this too much. The main line of the queen a5 check variation is queen d2, though. And now after take, we are entering again a similar scenario to the earlier one. Now we go knight b4. d5 hanging, and the knight can't move because c2 hanging, and in case of castles, a2 hanging too, which is the most important detail. If c4, we go bishop f5. This is a cheeky attempt to invite them to castles so that we can hit the canteen ASAP. But on a more serious note, it threatens knight d3 check. It immobilizes the knight. It's just annoying. We defend the pawn. We stop c5. And yeah, we actually have a very nasty tactical threat here, which is knight d5, c d5, bishop a3, ba3, rook takes c3. And so white needs to defend against that. Our king is likely going to go to d7, the bishop to d6. We can send the pawns. Fun position still ahead. So castles is the main line, where I don't recommend we do knight d5. This looks to me like a line where white has a lot of easy moves, easy trades, and a crystal clear better position with bishop against knight, against pawns with both sides. Yeah, I'm blitzing through this. I don't think we should do this. It's very, very unpleasant. For the time being, we managed to fend off all of white's threats, but in the long run, this looks like a long-lasting misery. So, no. I would much rather gobble up a2, come back, and take it from here. For example, if bishop c4, b5. And here the engine has a strong countermeasure, which is borderline unfindable for humans, d6. Takes, bishop takes. This is an insane idea. And if we take, then after knight takes b5, the bishop is on, the knight is on, and knight c7 is on, and that's too much to handle. So we are best advised to just sidestep the check and complete development. Bishop f5 is coming next, and we're doing great. Ish. Yeah, I quite like black. Knight c4 makes a lot more sense, though, than bishop c4. Bishop f5, immediately pinpointing the problem. Bishop b4, knight e5, rook d8. And we can castle next. And we hope that our bishop pair is going to secure sufficient compensation for the pawn deficit. But objectively speaking, this is obviously a position that is better for white. And with that, friends, we have got the d5 rogue variation covered as well. And so our next one is going to be the knight d5, bishop e7, take variations where we can go rogue against c3 as well as against c4. So I suggest that we begin with c3, and let's see how we go rogue here. So c3 it is, ladies and gentlemen, and as you remember, our main course is not recommending here bishop b7 because that is the renegade way to play. Now, in the entirety of this Renegade Sveshnikov chapter, where we look at these wilder side variations, this one, in my opinion, is A, the most solid, and B, the least, crazy type of scenario. So, in my opinion, this actually is a fully fledged, absolutely legit alternative to the popular bishop g5 and castle moves here that are the main lines. So bishop b7 introduces a very positional idea whereupon we simply want to constantly challenge the knight on d5, and we are very often going to rely on a rather unusual, in terms of Sicilian Sveshnikov, unusual maneuver, which is going to be knight b8, knight d7. So let's have a look-see. If bishop e2, we've got bishop g5. Now we are facilitating knight e7. Knight c2, castles, and knight e7. And there you have it. We are provoking some kind of trades. And if knight b4, then we are going to draw from one of the greatest coaching legends of all time, Dvoretsky, who came up with the theory of the superfluous knights. When two knights are on the same circuit, typically the one behind serves only one purpose: be ready to recapture on d5. And so now we switch plan and we simply go knight to g6, merely avoiding the trade which we initially wanted to do, because now a5 is going to kick the knight out, causing further issues, and then we can revisit the idea of trading either via knight e7 or knight f4. We have got an absolutely problem-free position here. It's really no biggie at all. So after bishop b7, bishop d3 is a bit more ambitious. We go bishop g5 again. The plan is knight e7 again. Here you go. And now white is actually already in struggle city in terms of keeping the d5 square for pieces rather than pawns. Knight b4, but it's simply not going to cut it. We trade. If knight takes, we take with the bishop. And this way we even have the bishop pair. We are ready to send it in true Sveshnikov style with f5, e4, and what's there not to love? Easy peasy. So, finally, knight c2. And this is where it comes. Knight to b8. And this is indeed quite unique. We are going to read out to d7 after castles, and then, yeah, bishop g5, knight d7, and then the knight can come from b6 and f6, depending on what white does. For example, if they go h4, a typical Sveshnikov idea, do not be tempted to take that, because after queen h5, we would have to start a new game, as this one is already lost. Simply go and follow the plan, knight d7, and trade, and trade. And now taking on f6 is going to create double pawns, but we are Sveshnikov players. A, we're used to them. To B, we know that this is really not that bad. Rook d8, d5 is going to break, and white's advantage here is minimal. If knight f5, it doesn't look good at all, then knight d7. We jettison the d6 pawn in order to accelerate development. Knight d6, bishop d5, queen d5, knight b6. Very nice play. Queen c6, and now we are going to play the slightly surprising queen b8. The idea is obviously to vacate the d8 square for the rook, but we are also looking to do the cheeky rook a7, rook c7, gently catching and trapping that queen. Know that that doesn't work with the queen on d8, because when we come here, this is hanging. But now rook a7, rook c7 is a super annoying plan. Yeah, we're doing great. So knight f5, but now we have got our own counterplay with knight a4, hitting b2, hitting c3, and just in general, we are doing great. Note that white, provided that they want to castle kingside, is still 2 moves away from castling, and if they want to defend b2, that's 3 more moves before that king is secure. A lot of damage to be done in that period of time. So the final move in this variation is bishop d3 again. Now there is obviously less pressure on d5, so this is more sensible. Knight d7, castles, and bishop g5. The good old Sveshnikov theory of trading the bad bishop for a knight is always a great strategic ploy. And now simply e4 is on, d5 is pending. Black has easily equalized, if not more. f3, queen b6 with pin, and we break the center with d5. And typically in the Sicilian, if this liberating move is played, not only does it equalize, but it already hands the advantage over to black. Now, one final thing, please do not retake this with a knight, because that would be kind of embarrassing. So just keep in mind that there is a checkmate to be blundered there, but bishop takes d5 will suffice for sure. And so that's it, folks. c3, bishop b7. I genuinely think that this is a 50-50 whether you pick this line or the recommended main line. On the other hand, against c4, now we can turn on the feisty. Here, instead of b4, we can go knight d4, friends. Knight d4 right away. And we are on a journey to invite crazy complications and a few cheap traps. For example, If knight c2, you walked into that one, good sir or lady. Bishop g4, and there is no good way to interpose on the diagonal, as f3 would be promptly met with bishop h4 check, and now g3 is not playable, so the king will have to go on a bit of an unwanted excursion. Game over. Bishop e2 not playable, so queen b1 is the best they have. And now we simply take and play rook c8. And what is there not to love about our position? We bring the bishop back to e6. d5 is going to be traded, and we have a completely fine, perfect position. Knight c2 not playable. Bishop d3, more so. Bishop e6. We want to trade on d5, of course. Castles. If they take, we take back. Castles, take c3, 4 rather, excuse me, and castles, and super easy equality at the very least. I mean, our knight on d4 is an absolute beast. So castles, we take. They take, we castle, and as per usual in the Svesh, we give up the b5 pawn, and we open up the diagonal. This is going to actually fizzle out into a equalish end-game / late middle game scenario. We are down a pawn, but the presence of opposite-colored bishops 100% guarantee very, very, very high chances of draws. Queen a5, rook f8 are our following moves, and yeah, we shouldn't be able to lose this. Finally, if they take on b5, the fun begins. Bishop d7, b7 rather, excuse me. And now I have got a bunch of variations to offer. Obviously, our main plan is to take on d5 and then opposite colored bishops, ef pawn running, etc. Knight c3 is a very strange way to dodge this. And here we are going to pull ahead. Castles, takes, and Bumski, rook takes, exchange, Saccharino. We are inviting the scenario where we're down an exchange, down a pawn, but we have got immense piece activity, and the white king can't castle. Queen a4 is very logical, hitting the bishop. Queen b6. Defending the bishop, hitting b2. And so now a few trades. Take, take. And we trade the c2 knight for the rook. And here white obviously can't retake on a1 on account of queen b2, so they must see this very neat intermediate move, the only way to play for white. When we have to go queen b7, rook c1, rook c8, queen d3, and just when it feels like we are about to be knocked out of this game because we ran out of steam, there is always an extra pawn push to look at. And it turns out that the queen cannot capture this pawn on account of the check picking of the unprotected piece, PDO, loose pieces drop off. And if they take with the pawn, then we sacrifice another one because that's what we do best. And after queen b3, check, king e1, and bishop d4, out of nowhere, we managed to maximize our piece activity, and we have got some very gnarly threats. e3, queen f6, mate threat on f2, chief amongst them, and black has got very decent compensation for the material deficit. Okay, if they take on a6, we take d5, has always been the plan. And here we have got two moves, actually. Queen a5 is the main idea, but castles may be playable. Bishop c4, rook a6. Take, check. And now again, no castling. Very, very interesting, wild scenario. I quite like black here, actually. I wouldn't mind giving this one a test run. Alternatively, we can just give a check. Queen d2, pick off d5, followed by castle. And yeah, it's definitely white who has the problems with completing development. G2 is hanging, so f1 bishop is difficult to mobilize. The queen e4 check is always there if the knight gets too cocky. So yeah, this is golden. Bishop d3 is also not recommendable. Thus, best is bishop c4. AB. And now again, we have got a range of moves. If knight b, you first take on d5, since now the bishop can't retake, ed, and check. Knight back, queen b4, bishop b3, dropping back to protect b2, castles, castles. And this is the Sicilian Sveshnikov Benko gambit variation, where our pressure on the A and B files is just absolutely off the charts. And White is in the world of hurt here to stay afloat. Really, really cool line. Yeah, those heavy pieces on the B and A file. Oh, la, 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 la. That is going to be some rough stories for White. Okay, so knight b5 is not that great. Knight f6, gf, knight b5 is playable. We always rely on this check on a5. It's very, very handy. And that frequently, it actually leads to these endgame scenarios where we take, they take, we take. It feels like we are up a piece, but dang it, why did they have to find that? And here too, actually, we are going to bank on pressure. So we are going to play rook a3, we dodge the check, and we're down material, but the AB pawns right now are definitely weaknesses rather than assets. And e4 is hanging too. f5 may be a pending threat with picking off a pawn on g2. White has the more material, but we have the more fun. And I think that for a Sveshnikov player is an ultimate way to sell a line. Very good stuff. So the best course of action is bishop b5. And after king f8, the position remains quite complicated. Note that now we are threatening rook a3, knight b5. So white doesn't have time to castle. They have to drop back. And yeah, queen a5 check is again very annoying. Queen d2 and bishop d8. And here we are reaching again a crossroad where white has knight c3 again, queen c5, rook a3 takes threat renewed, and two moves again. If they drop back, no, that's the main line, actually, sorry. So if bishop d5, then we take, knight takes, and rook takes. Bishop a5 incoming, and knight c2 incoming. Knight c2. Note that bishop a5 is well met by knight b4, hence the check. And here it's not really good to take on a1 at all, because then after rook takes back, rook c1, the roles reverse. We won the material, we lost the initiative. So instead we pursue the king, and we rather play this position where the knight is getting undermined on d5. Compensation is the name of the game. Yeah. Interesting sharp line. Alternatively, bishop d3, d5. Once again, just in the nick of time, we managed to squeeze this in. And now, if castles, ignoring it, then bishop a5. And now the bishops are again firing on all cylinders. Rook c1, de. Knight e, neat tactic, hanging the queen. So we go desperado. And in the end of the day, I prefer black. We can tuck the king away on g7. The 8 pawns are weak. The d4 knight is monstrous. We are golden. If instead of castle they engage with d5, we still go bishop a5. And now again, if castles, we take. Take, take. Knight hanging, mate hanging, wouldn't want to be up. Take. Queen b2 is only. If takes, then check picks off the bishop. Hence, queen b2. Queen c5. Take, 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 take. And a likely draw is going to come. If instead of castles after d5, ed, bishop a5, they go knight c2, then e4. You've got to love these pawn sacks. So good. And now, on top of everything else, we benefit from king f8 because rook e8. Ay, 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 ay. Love and life. If bishop e4, knight b5 is also very good, speaking of exploiting pins. And this variation is more or less forced. And yes, white has 2 pawns for the exchange, but we have got very active pieces. And actually, we are looking to activate the h8 rook next with h5, rook h6, I prefer black. So bishop a5, knight c2, e4. And if knight d4, we take d3. 2 bishops against 2 knights, nothing go wrong. Queen d5, 3, queen d5. Now, queenside castles is a must because g2 was bleeding. Bishop takes. Now, queen can't take due to rook c8. So bc forced. And good luck surviving this position, which, according to Stockfish, is even. And by the way, again, the deployment of the h8 rook is going to be the exact same. h5, rook h6, swing across. Stockfish says, draw. I say checkmate. Report back to me who was right. So, after queen takes a5, or rather, excuse me, after bishop d8, queen takes a5 is our main line. In this sub-variation, bishop takes king f1. King d1 actually main. King f1, g6. Now that's the best to tuck the king away. Take. So, sorry, I'm going to stall. Knight b5, we trade. Rook c8. I think taking on d5 was a bit premature because then bishop c6 could shut us in. Whereas rook c8, bishop d5, followed by rook c2 is the correct order. For example, here. And now you can see that the bishop can no longer shut the c5. f5, e4, opposite colored bishops, 2 passers, but for the time being, they are at home. And yeah, it's not clear at all why white would be better here. And so finally, if king d1, then f5, undermining the knight on d5, f3, g6. King g7, rook fc8. If knight c2, rook c8 immediately jumping on the bishop. Now knight d4, rook c4 is looking like $1 million. Total craziness. fe, knight a5, rook d4, and everything is under control. King f7, rook c8, and our central connected passes are stronger than theirs. The engine might tell you it's draw, but engine doesn't understand human chess. So let's go b3. Bishop d, ed, king f7. Knight d, ed. And likely further simplifications will ensure a drawish outcome, but this is a bit, yeah, here we are definitely down a pawn, and yeah, we are fighting for the draw here. And that was knight c2, and the final line is knight b5, bishop b5, king g7. Again, no hurry to take on d5 because of this bishop c6 shutdown. So first, we want to ensure that that doesn't bother us. If rook c1, you take e4, and then rook b8. New motif, we're threatening to take d5 and b5. If the bishop moves, we take d5 and b2. So a4 is forced, and now we go in for the f5. And here we fizzle out into a likely draw again with very active heavy pieces. Rook b4, bishop b6 is an idea. We should be a-okay. King e2 is the main line. We go take. And again, opposite colored bishop scenario, down a pawn. we may or may not be able to hold, but I would bet on we may hold this without too many dramas. And that concludes, friends, the Renegade action against the positional 95. And now we are moving on to the Renegade, Rogue, Rebellious, and Rascal behavior by Black against the more tactical Bishop f6 95 lines. And we shall begin our operations with g3, where I have got something very cool in store for you. So, friends, G3 is going to be met by the very courageous and exciting and fun and rebellious and renegade H5. Let's go. H5, H4, of course, is the plan, preferably in one go. So ignore my arrow. Wow. Okay, that's what happens when your mouse dies, but you still want to play aggro chess. So the idea is go H5 and then H4 and then either trade or push in. We will see how we go. Two responses from White. EF5 and Bishop G2, the two most thematic responses in such scenarios. Bishop G2 is going to lead to the most tragic pawn structure you have ever seen in your life, but we're still excited about it. F4, take, and hello, 4 isolated pawns. And now White has C3 and C4. C3 is well met by Bishop G4. This is another thing that I forgot to / omitted to mention about H5. It does allow and it does facilitate in certain scenarios Bishop G4 as a very annoying additional extra. So once again, Bishop G2, F4, opening the diagonal for that bish. And indeed, after C3, we do cash in on this fat tempo. Obviously, provoking F3 would be a huge accomplishment, completely destroying the G2 bishop. So Bishop F3 makes more sense, but now Knight E5, and all of a sudden, we are threatening to unite those pawns. In fact, we are uniting the pawns, and Knight F3 check is pending. Rook H3 can come and support. White is in a lot of hurt here, so no, don't do this. White players, or players behind the white pieces rather. C4 instead of C3. Bishop G7. Now the problem for White is the long diagonal, as it often tends to be the case in C4 lines. The B2 pawn is very tender in the underbelly of the White position. CB, AB, Knight B. 4 isolated pawns stay, and here we are going to put the cherry on top of the cake with a casual King F8, sidestepping all the knight checks, hanging B2, and putting the onus back on White in terms of, fine, okay, we had to give up castling, but your king is not exactly super secure either. Queen A5 check pending, followed by Bishop A6. And if they castle short, well, that king is very exposed there too to Knight E5, F3 ideas. The rook comes to G8. And don't forget that amidst all this, Bishop takes is also on. So quite decent compensation, I would say, for the pawn, actually, only one. So yeah, Bishop G2 is actually really not that dangerous of a move. EF is, when Bishop takes F5, and now again, we have Bishop G2 or C3. C3 allows a neat attacking pattern that I want you to see, Bishop E4. And all of a sudden, they don't have access to Bishop G2. They have to play an ugly Rook G1. But now we seize the center. Queen D5, Knight E7, pawn to D5. And no question whatsoever that it can only be Black who is better. Exciting times ahead. Queen B6, Rook D8. Happy days. So C3 is nonsense. Bishop G2 has to be played in order to strengthen White's presence on the long diagonal and also to cancel out the Bishop E4 threat. Now, we will again rely on our favorite Bishop G4 move, trying to provoke some F3 to blunt the Bishop's diagonal. But of course, they should not do that. Instead, Queen D3 or Bishop F3 are the two moves that White should be considering. Bishop F3 is very well met by Knight D4. Bishop takes, pawn takes, and all of a sudden it turns out that White is in a bit of a pickle because of this B4 move. Hi. That is very unfriendly. Knight c4, knight c2, king e2, and here it's probably not really advisable to take on a1, as it would give the initiative to white after various knight jumps. We recommend queen c8 here first, allowing check and check again, and essentially offering a draw. But if they reject the draw offer, then a very curious case occurs where they go like, no, we don't want queen trade, take the rook, please. And we go like, no, we don't want to take your rook, thank you very much. We much rather would take your knight on c4, which forces king d3 when we drop back to e6, introducing knight c5. And the position is a hot mess with various knight jumps pending for both colors. Really fun position, if you ask my opinion about it. But yeah, definitely complex fight is ahead. So best is queen d3 to step out of this annoying business altogether. And then we play rook to c8. It is a bit of a defensive measure. If we really want to be honest with ourselves, it is primarily done to secure the knight on c6 and also to step out of the diagonal of the g2 bishop by the rook as well. Now two moves, castles and the main line c3. So let's begin with castles. This feels like they are playing our game as it walks into h4, h3, bishop back to e6, g4, and then we are going to play bishop h6, shutting down f4, in general placing the bishop well, and we look to, believe it or not, castle and then play f5. c3, castles, and yeah, this position is really not that bad. The engine prefers white, but it's complex, it's untrodden path, it's uncharted territories, and that always means, you know, that they are on their own, they have to figure it out, and it's a very complex position, so I would be happy to be black here. The final main line is c3, and then we drop back to e6. We have done our job on g4, time to come back and contest the center. Knight c2, f5, true Sveshnikov style. Knight e3, e4, queen e2, knight e5, and here actually what I'm about to show you is A, extremely unlikely to occur, B, mind-bogglingly engine-esque from white's point of view. So white here has got two moves, the two castlings, right? Queenside castles is quite bad on account of bishop h6, then trade, and then rook c5, kicking the knight, and then pulling back, and then, yeah, just a5, b4 is coming, and we have no problems really here. This position looks quite decent for black, whereas castles, according to the machine, the better one leads to an absolutely bananas variation. This is how it goes. Bishop h6, queen e2, king d7, and here the engine swears by knight f5 and giving up a piece like so. Before we get into this, let me show you a sideline. After the more sane looking queen d1, we have f4, knight back. Note that taking on f4 twice is essentially checkmate after queen h4. So knight c2 is more or less forced, and yeah, take that, my friends, is the move. Bishop c1. What a move. What a chess move. Queen c1, rook takes h2. Check. And thanks for coming. See you later, alligator. The game is over. So, because of this, the engine likes knight f5, bishop g7, and note that now the queen has to go back, giving up f5. I honestly do not think that a lot of humans would pick this and assume, alongside the engine, that white has a serious advantage here. I mean, granted, there is a lot of pawns and the king is stuck on in the middle, but the general vibe of the position is not that we are clearly worse here. And so I think we are very safe with this variation with h5 because to get all the way here, once again, completely uncharted territory, and what really needs to be super creative and bold even to play into a variation like this. So if they get this far, I reckon they deserve it. And that, friends, concludes the G3 H5 variation, and I have got only one remaining Renegade variation, which is going to be in the EF, Bishop F5, Knight C2 line, where our course recommends Bishop E6, followed by Knight E7. But if we decide to go berserk on the day, then we can sprinkle in the cheeky Bishop E4 instead of 6. Now, the benefit of Bishop E4 is that it puts pressure on D5 just as much as Bishop E6, but it also looks at G2 and C2 a little bit, so the scope of the bishop for the time being is significantly greater. The downside, of course, is that bishop floats in air. It's easy to target. There are a fair few loose pieces on the board, so black really needs to watch out here to not to walk into some unpleasant tactics. We have got 4 variations here, actually, so quite a wide-ranging final line. Queen G4, obviously, is the most obvious, is the most given move to exploit the 2 hanging bishops, but we pick off a knight, and then we go for a bit of a walkie-walkie with the king. Not the first, not the last time in the Sveshnikov we do this. All of our pieces are developed. Rook G8 is pending. We look good, honestly. If Knight E3, pull back. Bishop D3, Rook G8. Queen takes, King C7. And now D5 is our follow-up plan. We're down a pawn, but it's a very exciting, fun position with a lot of momentum behind our play with D5. Once the queen leaves H7, we might go E5, E4, F5. Queen can come out on G5, and it's quite unclear to me where the white king ultimately will end up, where it's actually safe. So, maybe Queen H6, finding immediately a retreat path towards D2, and also potentially threatening Rook D1, hitting bishop and pawn. F5, ignoring everything I just said, castles, and Bishop E6, neatly shutting down the 6th rank threats. Now, this is a scenario where club players would be like, ooh, that looks very scary with the rook on the same file as our king and queen. Well, yes and no. Like, optically, it looks like it's something, but objectively, realistically speaking, 0 threats, 0 problems. We're not afraid of ghosts. G3, Queen F8. We're quite happy to trade queens, as we have got some very, very nice pawn masses. And the fact that we have more pawn islands is actually helpful here, because you can go for plans like H4, H4 rather, excuse me. Also on the queen side, depending on where the bishop goes, we can plan to play A5, B4. So it's actually best if they avoid the trade, but then bishop A2, and now knight A5, knight B3 is a pretty cheeky checkmate threat that white needs to concern him or herself about. Happy days. Knight E3 is logical, kind of mimicking the motions of the main line with bishop E6, with castle. And now, if bishop E2, that's another benefit, by the way, of knight E3, we simply sidestep the business, king H8 as usual, and we send it. F3, we trade, and we trade. And we have got an equal position. Dark squares are a bit tender. Bishop H6, bishop E3 might be a thing. I don't see why black is in any trouble there. Excuse me, let's go back here. Yeah, I'm loving it. So, bishop D3 is more logical, trying to trade bishop for bishop, retaining the blockading knights. And again, we trade knight, not bishop. F5. Now, E4 is on the map, and knight E7 is also on the map. But if I were to play for a win, I would definitely play E4, knight E5, try to send the F-pawn as well if possible. And the position is absolutely balanced. A4, I think, is very poorly timed here, and we are just going to ignore it. And the best what I can do here is an almost forcing line, very akin to some of the variations we looked at earlier with the knight d4 motif, if you still remember. Queen a8, bishop b5, bishop c2, takes, and knight d4. And after take, it's actually white who needs to concern themselves with some issues, as b5 is hanging, g2 is hanging, uncastled king. Not an easy position to play at all. So we are happy again. And so the final line is f3. But here we are actually doing splendidly well. Take, knight d7, d5. And once again, we have accomplished the d5 push in the Sveshnikov. The white pieces are incredibly passive. It can only be better for black. No questions whatsoever. And ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our very bold, brave, renegade ways of playing the Sveshnikov. I think that this chapter alone is an awful lot of fun, like a really bundle of fun. Many exciting, sharp variations, deviations. Actually, believe it or not, before I started recording this particular segment, I just had a blitz game where I tried out the renegade line against the knight d5, early knight d5, where we take and we go knight b4 instead of knight b8, and I absolutely butchered my opponent. It was just such a thrill. They took the a7 pawn. I got my kingside attack, and just as scripted by the Renegade Sveshnikov chapter, it was just yummo. Can't wait to play it again. So yeah, friends, use this chapter. Not all the time, but every now and then sprinkle in a little bit of Renegade, and your results will back you. Trust me on that one. Righto. With that, ladies and gents, we conclude this chapter. And now we are going to move on to the model games, which is, in my personal view, one of the most important chapters in any opening course. So let's begin with that.